The Senate confirmation hearing room was packed to capacity on that cold January morning in 2025. Cameras lined the walls. Senators filled their seats. Staffers whispered behind nameplates. Howard Lutnick, the billionaire CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald and the administration's nominee for Commerce Secretary, sat at the witness table with the confidence of a man who believed this moment was already won. For nearly 3 hours, the hearing had followed a familiar rhythm. Questions about markets. Questions about economic growth. Questions about loyalty to the administration's agenda. Lutnick answered calmly, sometimes warmly, occasionally with humor. His record on Wall Street, his survival story after September 11th, and his philanthropic efforts were referenced repeatedly. Everything appeared to be moving toward an easy confirmation. Then Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas took her seat. What followed would not immediately be described as a scandal, a crime, or a conviction. Instead, it would be remembered as a moment when uncomfortable questions were asked publicly, when powerful institutions were forced into the spotlight, and when the balance of the hearing shifted in real time before millions of viewers. Crockett, a freshman congresswoman known for her direct style and legal background, carried a manila folder. As she adjusted her microphone, Lutnick glanced up. His expression changed subtly. Not fear, but alertness. The look of someone realizing the conversation might no longer be scripted. Mr. Lutnick, Crockett began, her voice steady and measured, I have some questions about your company's activities that I believe the American people deserve clarity on. The room quieted. To understand why this exchange mattered, it helps to understand who these two people were before that moment. Howard Lutnick was not simply a Wall Street executive. He was widely viewed as a survivor and a builder. After losing hundreds of employees, including his brother, in the September 11th attacks, he rebuilt Cantor Fitzgerald into a major force in global finance. Over decades, the firm became a dominant player in U.S. Treasury markets, facilitating a significant portion of daily government bond transactions. Supporters argued that this experience made Lutnick uniquely qualified to serve in government. When his nomination was announced, many in the financial world praised the choice. A businessman who understood markets, resilience, and crisis management. At 63, Lutnick had testified before Congress before. He knew the process. His team had prepared extensively. With a favorable Senate map, confirmation seemed likely. Jasmine Crockett's path was very different. Before Congress, she built her career as a civil rights attorney. She earned a reputation for digging into records, challenging assumptions, and asking questions that others avoided. In state politics, she was known for preparation. In Washington, some initially dismissed her as outspoken but inexperienced. That perception would soon change. Unlike many members who rely entirely on staff briefings, Crockett was known to personally review filings, reports, and public records. In the weeks leading up to the hearing, she had been reviewing market data connected to major financial institutions. According to her later statements, certain trading patterns stood out to her as unusual. Not illegal on their face, but precise in timing. Back in the hearing room, Crockett began with a question that sounded routine. Mr. Lutnick, can you describe Cantor Fitzgerald's trading activity in U.S. Treasury securities during the third quarter of 2024? Lutnick leaned forward comfortably. Certainly, Representative. As one of the largest inter-dealer brokers in the Treasury market, our transaction volumes during that period were consistent with historical averages. Crockett nodded. That's helpful, she replied. Because the data I reviewed shows notable increases in activity in specific instruments shortly before several major Federal Reserve announcements. She was careful with her words. She did not accuse. She did not conclude. I'm not alleging wrongdoing, she continued. I'm asking about timing. Lutnick responded that market participants often adjust positions based on public indicators and expectations, emphasizing that all activity complied with regulations. Crockett then referenced another firm, Meridian Capital Holdings, registered offshore. Are you familiar with this entity? She asked. Lutnick said he would need to review records, noting that large firms interact with many counterparties. Crockett explained that Meridian's trading activity appeared to mirror certain market movements that had drawn attention. She stated that public records showed the firm was established shortly after a private dinner involving several financial and regulatory figures, a dinner that had been reported in social pages at the time. At this point, a senior member of the committee attempted to steer the conversation back to qualifications. Crockett responded respectfully but firmly, stating that financial judgment and transparency were central to the role of Commerce Secretary. She then displayed a photograph from the dinner in question and asked Lutnick if he recognized the individuals present. He acknowledged attending many events and said he could not recall everyone. Crockett identified the individuals using publicly available information, including a Federal Reserve advisor and an executive linked to Meridian Capital. The room reacted audibly. Still, Crockett stopped short of conclusions. Instead, she asked one final question for the day. Can you explain why a political action committee supporting your nomination received a substantial donation shortly after a highly profitable treasury trade involving a firm linked to these activities? Lutnick denied any improper connection, stating that political contributions are legal and protected, and that correlation did not imply coordination. At that point, the chairman called for order and recessed the hearing, requesting documentation from Representative Crockett. Overnight, the story spread rapidly. Media outlets described it not as proof, but as a serious line of inquiry. Analysts debated whether the timing patterns meant anything at all. Supporters of Lutnick called the questioning speculative. Others argued the questions deserved examination. By the next morning, the hearing room was more crowded than before. Lutnick returned looking composed, but visibly strained. His legal team had expanded. Crockett returned with additional materials, stating they had been reviewed through lawful channels, including public records and whistleblower communications whose authenticity would need independent verification. When questioned again, Lutnick denied any improper use of information. He acknowledged social interactions with regulators, but emphasized that policy decisions were confidential and outside his control. Crockett then disclosed that she had received internal communications from a source claiming direct knowledge of trading decisions. She read excerpts carefully, framing them as allegations requiring investigation, not established facts. The impact was immediate. Committee members on both sides requested that relevant agencies review the materials. The chairman announced that the hearing would be suspended pending further review by appropriate authorities. Within hours, Lutnick withdrew his nomination, stating that he did not want the process to distract from the administration's agenda. Investigations followed. Federal agencies confirmed they were reviewing trading records, communications, and compliance practices. No conclusions were announced at that time. Markets reacted cautiously. Cantor Fitzgerald stated publicly that it would cooperate fully and that it believed its activities were lawful. For Jasmine Crockett, the moment transformed her public profile. Supporters praised her diligence. Critics accused her of grandstanding. She responded by repeating a single point. Oversight is about asking questions, not prejudging outcomes. In subsequent interviews, Crockett emphasized that her goal was transparency, not spectacle. If nothing improper occurred, she said, then a review will confirm that. If something did occur, the public deserves to know. As investigations continued, additional reports surfaced, some confirming unusual patterns, others disputing their significance. Legal experts debated the standards required to prove wrongdoing in complex financial markets. Legislation was introduced proposing stricter disclosure rules for interactions between regulators and market participants. The proposals received bipartisan attention, though not all passed. Months later, parts of the investigation concluded with settlements and regulatory changes, while other aspects remained contested in court. The full story unfolded slowly, as such cases often do. But the hearing itself remained a defining moment, not because it delivered instant verdicts, but because it demonstrated how power could be questioned publicly, how preparation could shift a narrative, and how a single hearing could trigger scrutiny reaching far beyond one nomination. For Jasmine Crockett, It reinforced a philosophy she would later repeat often. Follow the records. Follow the timelines. Ask the questions others won't. For viewers, it became a reminder that democracy doesn't always move with certainty, but it does move through accountability. If you found this breakdown informative, consider subscribing for more long-form political analysis. Share your thoughts below. Do moments like this strengthen public trust or deepen division? And what other hearings should we examine next? Because in the end, oversight isn't about outcomes. It's about ensuring that no one is beyond questions, and that transparency remains a public expectation.